Have you ever been in a conversation that felt like it was slowly dying? Like you could hear the life draining out of it with each passing second, and you were just standing there, watching it happen, powerless to stop it. I remember this party I went to about 3 years ago. I was talking to someone I just met, and within maybe 90 seconds, we'd already exhausted the weather, our jobs, and the quality of the guacamole. The silence that followed wasn't just awkward, it was thick, like physical pressure building in my chest. I could feel my brain scrambling, desperately fishing for something, anything to say. But all I kept coming up with was more weather-related garbage. Oh Lord, it is good to be here with you on another day where we're going to talk about the stuff that keeps us up at night. Today, we're diving into why conversations die and what actually keeps them alive. If that opening story triggered a painful memory for you, if you've stood in that exact silence, feeling that exact panic, hit the like button so I know we're in this boat together. It helps more people find the Confident Connection Lab. And honestly, it helps me know I'm not the only one who's lived through these moments. Here's what nobody tells you about conversation. The reason you run out of things to say isn't because you're boring. It's because you've been taught the wrong skill. We've all been programmed to think that being a good conversationalist means being a good talker. Someone who has interesting stories, witty observations, clever remarks ready to deploy. So when we're in a conversation, our brains are in performance mode, constantly scanning for the next impressive thing we can contribute. But here's the brutal truth I learned after years of bombing at parties and networking events. While you're busy thinking about what brilliant thing you're going to say next, you're not actually listening. You're just waiting for your turn to talk, and the other person can feel it. They can sense that you're not really there with them, and that's when the conversation starts to flatline. I want you to think of the last time you felt truly heard by someone. Take a second. That feeling, that rare moment when someone really got you. It wasn't because they impressed you with their stories, was it? It was because they asked you something that made you feel seen. They were curious about you in a way that felt genuine, not like they were just filling dead air. Psychologists have studied this phenomenon, and they call it the question persuasion link. Basically, people who ask more questions, especially follow-up questions, are rated as more likable and more trustworthy. But here's where it gets interesting. It's not just about asking any questions. It's about asking questions that show you're actually paying attention to the answers. Let me paint you a picture of what this looks like in real life. You meet someone at a coffee shop, and they mention they just got back from a trip. The surface level response is, "Oh, cool, where'd you go?" That's fine. That's normal. But that conversation is going to die in about 3 exchanges unless you go deeper. The person who understands the superpower of questions hears that same statement and thinks differently. They might ask, "What made you pick that place?" Or, "Was there a moment during the trip that surprised you?" Hear the difference? The first question is collecting data. The second set of questions is exploring the human experience behind the data. One treats the person like a trivia card. The other treats them like a mystery worth solving. And people absolutely light up when you approach them that way. Because, and this is the key insight, most people are walking around feeling invisible. Think about your own life. How often does someone ask you a question and then genuinely wait to hear your real answer? Not the polite surface level answer, but the actual truth of what you think or feel. It's rare, right? So when you become the person who asks those kinds of questions, you're not just making conversation, you're giving people a gift they almost never receive. But here's where people mess this up, and I messed this up for years. They turn into interrogators. They ask question after question after question without revealing anything about themselves. And suddenly the conversation feels like an interview or a therapy session. The other person starts to feel exposed and unbalanced. That's not connection, that's extraction. The real skill is learning to weave questions with vulnerability. You ask something genuine, they answer. You share a small piece of your own experience that relates to what they just said, and then you ask a follow-up question that goes deeper. It's a dance, not a monologue and not an interrogation. It's a rhythm of curiosity and disclosure that builds trust with every exchange. I call this approach the curiosity bridge technique. Essentially, each question you ask is a bridge you're building between your inner world and theirs. But bridges need supports on both sides. If you're only asking without sharing, the bridge collapses. If you're only sharing without asking, you're just building a wall they have to climb over. We talk about the psychology of connection every week here at the Confident Connection Lab. If you want to master this stuff with us, if you want to become the kind of person who never runs out of things to say because you're genuinely interested in the people around you, make sure you're subscribed. And hey, drop a comment telling me about a time when someone asked you a question that made you feel truly seen. I read every single one, so here's what I want you to try this week. Next time you're in a conversation, resist the urge to plan your next statement. Instead, listen to what the person is actually saying and ask yourself, what am I curious about in what they just shared? Not what would sound clever, not what would make me look smart. What am I genuinely curious about? Then ask that. Watch what happens. You'll notice their energy shift. The conversation won't just survive. It'll actually come alive. All right, so we've established that questions are the secret weapon. But now comes the part where most people panic. What questions do you actually ask? Because let's be honest, there's a huge difference between asking questions that create connection and asking questions that make you sound like you're conducting a job interview. Or worse, like you're trying to gather intel for some weird dossier. I learned this the hard way on a date about 5 years ago. I just read some article about how asking questions shows interest. So I went full investigator mode. Where did you grow up? What do your parents do? How many siblings? What's your favorite food? I was rattling them off like I was filling out a census form, and I could see it in her eyes. This growing sense of, why does this feel like a cross-examination? The date ended early. She said she had to feed her cat. She didn't have a cat. The problem wasn't that I was asking questions. The problem was that my questions had no soul. They were data mining, not connection building. So let me give you the actual toolkit, the frameworks that separate genuine curiosity from surface-level interrogation. First framework, the depth ladder. This is how you take any conversation from shallow to meaningful, without it feeling forced. Imagine every topic has 3 levels. Level 1 is facts. What do you do for work? Level 2 is feelings. What's the part of your job that actually energizes you? Level 3 is meaning. When did you realize that's what you wanted to do? Or did you kind of stumble into it? Hear how each question builds on the previous answer? You're not jumping topics randomly. You're descending deeper into one topic, showing the person that you're genuinely interested in understanding them, not just collecting surface details to report back to mission control. Here's a specific example. Someone tells you they're a teacher. The boring question is, what grade do you teach? That's fine, but it goes nowhere. Try this instead. What's a moment this year when you felt like you actually got through to a student? That question invites them to share a story, to relive an emotion. And when people share emotions, connection happens. It's chemistry. Second framework, the follow-up reflex. This is the skill that separates amateurs from masters. Most people ask one decent question and then immediately pivot to talking about themselves or asking about something completely different. But the real magic happens in the follow-up. When someone gives you an answer, there's always a thread you can pull. Let me show you what this sounds like. They say, I actually just started learning guitar. The amateur response is, oh, cool, I tried that once. Conversation dies. The follow-up reflex sounds like this. What made you want to start now? Or, have you hit that frustrating phase yet where your fingers hurt and you want to quit? You're taking their answer and treating it like it matters, like there's more to explore there. I want you to hear me on this distinction. Following up isn't about being nosy. It's about signaling that what they just shared was worth your attention. And in a world where most people are half listening while scrolling their phones, that signal is intoxicating. Third framework, the vulnerability trade. This is where you stop being an interviewer and become a human. After someone answers a meaningful question, You share a small, related piece of your own experience. Not a 10-minute monologue, just a quick, "Oh man, I felt that exact same thing when I..." And then you bounce it back to them with another question. The formula is ask, listen, relate, ask deeper. It creates this rhythm where both people are sharing, both people are being seen, and the conversation develops its own momentum. You're not performing, you're exploring together. Here's the phrase that changed everything for me. What's the story behind that? It works on almost anything. Someone mentions they hate coffee. What's the story behind that? They mention they love hiking. What's the story behind that love? It's open-ended. It invites narrative. And it shows you're interested in them as a person with a history, not just as a collection of preferences. Another killer phrase, how did that make you feel? I know. It sounds like therapy speak. But listen closely to this. When you ask someone about facts, they engage their reporting brain. When you ask them how something made them feel, they engage their experiencing brain. They go back to that moment. Their eyes change, their voice shifts. That's when real conversation happens. But here's the critical thing. You have to actually care about the answer. If you're asking these questions as a technique, as some kind of manipulation tactic to seem interesting, people will smell it. The tool only works if it's powered by genuine curiosity. You have to actually want to understand the person in front of you. So here's your practical application. This week, I want you to try the depth ladder on one conversation. Pick any topic that comes up naturally, and instead of bouncing to a new topic after the first answer, go 2 levels deeper. Ask about feelings, ask about meaning, ask for the story. Watch how the energy in the conversation shifts from polite to real. And here's the beautiful part. When you do this consistently, you never run out of things to say, because you're not trying to be impressive or clever. You're just being curious. And curiosity is infinite. There's always another question, always another layer to explore, always another story hiding inside the person across from you. The conversations that stick with us, the ones we remember years later, aren't the ones where someone dazzled us with their wit. They're the ones where someone made us feel understood, where someone asked us a question that made us stop and think, I've never actually put that into words before. That's the superpower. Not talking, asking, not impressing, understanding, not filling silence, creating connection. Go out there and ask better questions. The world needs more people who actually listen.